We've been on our property now for a little over 3 years, and we have done a lot. We've made huge strides. But in those 3 years, our kids have gotten older, our businesses have gotten bigger, and I'm looking at these August gardens and thinking, what am I going to do with these? They are beautiful, and they are full, and they are so many of the things that I dreamed of. But I need 30 hours in the day to get this all done. The courtyard garden that sits right in front of our little cottage needs a little bit of an overhaul this fall. There's a couple of beds with things that we planted that, they just weren't quite right. And like Monty Don says, if you don't love it, pull it out and try again. So I decided to do something that I'm not very good at, which was call in help. And I have enlisted a local gardener to come to my gardens every Friday to help me so that we can make some progress. I love the way this courtyard has shaped up. Remember, when we moved in, this was an old deck with a broken down hot tub. Underneath it was just dirt and gravel. So everything that you see here has literally been built from the ground up. It took us over a month just to haul out all the old decking. So I'm super happy with the transformation of this. But I don't want to stop there. I want to finish it. I want to get it done right so that it's a place that we can enjoy all the time. All that's really left to do besides restructure some of those beds is to go through and deadhead and fluff up, and soon enough, August will pass and it will be time to incorporate things like pots and pumpkins and mums. But for the time being, we're harvesting the grapes and harvesting the sunflower heads, enjoying the bouquets of zinnias. Next up is the greenhouse and shade gardens. I love these gardens because we just put these in last year when we built our pond. So I had a lot more knowledge of the area, of the flowers, after 3 years of gardening in the other gardens. So this one, luckily, was built much better originally. It's full of flowers that I love that do good in our area. It's full of colors and textures, things that took me a while to learn. If you've ever started a garden from the ground up, your first one isn't going to be your masterpiece. And this one, I'm amazed, even just after a few more years of gardening, I had so much more knowledge in structuring it. So this August, I'm not going to need to do a ton of work down here. We're just kind of pruning things back, keeping them beautiful. We had to replace an old almond tree that we lost in a windstorm. We planted a beautiful magnolia in its place. And this garden is just kind of creeping together and growing in, all beautiful, all colorful. It's fragrant. It's my favorite spot on the property right now to be, of course, because of the water. Except now I just want to go build ponds all over. Before the winter, we'll probably need to spread some more gravel and mulch some of the beds. But for now, we're just getting to enjoy it. What I love about the greenhouse gardens is that they're just a few steps away from the courtyard gardens, and yet they almost feel like something into themselves. Because of the water, we have some chairs down there to sit by the pond, and there's the big oak tree that you can walk underneath. You have to wade through the wandflower and the strawberries to make it in, but nestled underneath its big canopy are all different kinds of hostas and ferns. And, there's something about stepping into that space that just makes you feel like you're away from everything, at least for a little bit. This was my first year growing Japanese anemone, and I've decided to plant no less than 2,000 of them all over the property, because as the other flowers are fading, they're just coming into bloom, and I cannot get enough of them. I think the point in all of this is to cultivate this beauty, this area that was grass, this area that was very monochromatic, is now something unique, something special, something to be experienced. Now, granted, almost everything in there needs to be trimmed and deadheaded and weeded, hence the help. But even still, even in all its August shabbiness, it's still a beautiful place of life on the farm. Next up is the kitchen and potager gardens that are nestled right to the left of the house if you're looking at it. These were the very first gardens that we put in when we moved. 3 years ago, it was just grass. And when you're walking in from the courtyard, you have to go through a canopy of wisteria. This is our kitchen door and also the door that 99% of all of our guests enter. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I really hid it well behind this wisteria. Alas, this is where people enter into our home. This is where the kids will run out and play from. So it really serves as this passage between the two gardens. But what amazes me about the potager is how much our style and knowledge we've gained, how we probably would have done this differently. There's still so much about this garden that I love, but it has taken the hit of weeds and neglect this summer, simply because it's older, it's a little bit more established, and so I'm kind of like a live and let live policy here in the potager. So when we had our first round of help come last Friday, this was where we got started, because so much of it needs to be pulled out and rehomed and just sort of rethought with a little bit more intention. For those of you who have been watching our channel for a while, you'll remember that we really were working towards keeping a tidy potager in terms of the actual vegetable garden that's nestled in amongst the flowers. And on a whole, it's done really well this year. We've had to do a couple of big weeding sessions from the pathways and from the beds, but right now we're just planting a bunch of fall vegetables and getting the beds sort of set for the next thing, or just nestled in for the winter. I'm really pleased with this garden. I love having a small little patch right off the kitchen, so if I just need a few cherry tomatoes or a few artichokes or a few radishes, I can just pop out to this little garden and grab what I need in a basket, and the kitchen is just 10 feet away. But on the outside of the vegetable garden, it's a little bit of a different story. This garden needs a haircut. It needs to be peeled back to its base layer. It's so hard to pull plants out that are flowering and beautiful, but there are some things that I really don't want to self-seed. And so we're gonna keep what we want, and we're just gonna have to get our hands dirty and get in there and pull out a bunch of stuff that's overgrown and underwelcome. So this is it, the August overhaul. We have taken the very best of what the garden has to offer through June and July, and while it still continues to give, we have to start thinking about next spring. What perennials we want planted this fall that will then have that much more of a head start going into spring, the structure of the garden that we want, things like arches and rocks and new beds and timbers. How is it all going to tie together once the flowers fade? Years ago, I read a wonderful gardening book called The Layered Garden, and it talked about having a 4-season garden. Namely, what does your garden look like in spring? What's it offering? What makes it beautiful? And the same then continued for every season. So now I know that the garden is beautiful in summer, but I'm asking, what is going to make the garden beautiful in fall? What's going to make the garden beautiful in December? And that's where I realize I still have a lot of work to do.